was to transfer technology that was developed on the Deepsea Challenger project. So that's happening. We're continuing to work in deep ocean systems, on systems for other vehicles, and kind of the fate of the submarine is kind of TBD, but Jim wants to come back to the vehicle, I believe, at some point, and do more diving.
And for the ascent and descent, the way we actually design the sub is the sub goes up and down in a helical path. So it's every minute it's doing 2 rotations. So it's actually going very straight. Now we know where the sub is, so we just have to know what the translations are in the middle of the water column. But so basically we know where the sub is, we sit just off of it when it's coming up.
Can you, it appeared in the film that after he had come up on the trench, that he was actually on a ledge that looked as though it were much deeper and going down. Was he on the bottom, at the very bottom of the trench, or is there actually a wall that is deeper?
No, he was at the very bottom of the trench.
Okay.
Yeah, that was
the cliff, that was scary. But that was a 1,000-meter dive. I think the 3,000 or 4,000 feet level, we were filming it from the other vehicle that I mentioned. What was scary about that is that the sub landed about 100 feet from there. So that was that whole thing of, although you're dropping through this column and you're going near the bottom, what if he would have landed 50 feet to the right on that ledge and bounced? So I mean, there's a lot of, when you start thinking about it.
And so what's next for this group or the research?
Well, I'll start with this. Yeah, from a scientific perspective, they have been presenting their results at their own professional conferences and are working on papers to be published. Some have been submitted. One of our scientists is a planetary scientist, and his interest in this expedition was to understand something about how life might have evolved from the deep ocean, and how would that relate to our effort to find life on other planets, namely Mars, or his favorite moon of Jupiter, Europa. And so, again, back to how does life survive in these great extreme pressures, temperatures, and lack of light here on our own planet may relate to how we might expect to find that on other planets. So the scientists will, and the biologists will continue to analyze the bacteria and grow the bacteria, study it for antibiotic and anti-cancer potential, and that's a matter of months and years out before they'll come to some conclusions related to that.
And then I think a lot of us are working on subsea projects right now, different all over, and working together on different projects. So.
Just wonder who supported this wonderful project financially, and who the leadership of the group, what was going on, and how could we have more of this in our society?
It was National Geographic sponsored it, and then Rolex, corporate sponsors.
What did it cost, suppose, estimate?
I can't tell you. It paid for the dive.
Hi, my name is Robert Ladd. I shoot underwater and above water. And one of my favorite places is along the Gulf Stream where the big drop-offs are. And we get down around 350, we see it looks like an old beachhead. And we see it all along the Gulf Stream. And we'd like to know, we think that is back when the Ice Age, when the level was down 350 feet. And we think that's what that is. And off of Cape Sal Banks, they have the big drop-offs, about 97 feet, they drop to 5,000. And there's a place there that we call the elevator shaft. It's a great big elevator shaft. and it starts right at the top, goes straight down. We've been down 350 and swam into the break-offs. And as far as we can see, it just keeps going and going and going and going. There's a couple of underwater mountains off of that. And then there's the old Mayan civilization, they think. Have you guys thought about exploring that? And of course, I'm very fascinated about the edge of the Gulf Stream because the life forms there are just mind-boggling, you know. I can't shoot enough pictures, you know.
Well, I'll just comment that one of the biologists that's been working on some of the data that brought back Tim Shank, he's at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, and every time they go out to the Atlantic coast, he sees something he's never seen before, both structurally from the shape of the seafloor to biologically. I think you hit it on the head when you talked about the change in sea level. When you're talking about looking at features that you're seeing submerge now, probably represent a time when sea level was lower. And so an analog to what's happening on the coastline now and some of the features that are carved out from rivers and streams. But yeah, I mean, I'd be on board if there was an expedition heading out, and there are many. And like I said, they are always finding new things every time they go out, just in our own backyard. So.
Me too. What about the elevator shaft? What do you think that is?
I mean, it sounds like it would have to be some sort of a drainage feature. But I'd love to hear more about where that is. I don't know if Charlie's.
K-Sal Banks.
Oh, okay. I don't know, but that's.
Those are much shallower depths. I mean, Jim's particularly interested in deep sea, and even though that's deep for diving and deep for shallow, Phil Newton's here someplace. He's got subs that will go to those kind of depths and can really look at that sort of stuff. This is a real deep sea system.
Yeah, sorry, you wouldn't want to take a deep sea challenger. Yeah, no, I just meant as a geologist it'd be a fascinating place to explore, but yeah.
When we do those dives, we do what we call Superman dives. We put our hands behind us and sail down as fast as we can get there because it gives us more time. But anything going on, I'd love to be part of it. Thank you very much and enjoy the film.
This will be the last question.
All right, got the last one. All right. So I'm concerned with the scientific part of this documentary, great filmmaking, and et cetera, et cetera. But, so the film said, as a submersible descended, it shrunk about 2 inches when they got to the bottom. So clearly the environment there must have been much different from the environment that we live in right here. So were those factors taken into effect with the scientific output of this, like with especially in the film we could see that as it went down, the sediments, were dispersed along the bottom. Was there anything that was taken into account to reduce the sampling error so that they got the absolute surface of the bottom? Or with the arthropods, there were these huge arthropods, but these arthropods weren't made of steel, so my best guess is they would have expanded much more as they went up. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we didn't collect any pressurized samples. So that wasn't, we collected the samples. The arthropods, of course, weren't alive when they reached the surface. In terms of sediment, and you were talking about position and where we were, for our interest, just getting something back from those depths is significant. So knowing precisely the square meter of real estate that from where they were collected wasn't as important. Certainly, I'll let them speak to the consideration of all of those factors when it came to designing all of the equipment and the sampling equipment and the sub itself. Absolutely, everything you just mentioned about the difference in the environment had everything to do with it.
Yeah, like the samplers we were designing in the mess. I mean, the sub, when we left Sydney, wasn't in the same condition that it was when it dove in Challenger Deep. It was almost ready to dive, but we were working. So the transit from Sydney to Papua New Guinea was 4.5, 5 days. So those were full days, and we were rebuilding the sub or building the sub from the get-go. So it was kind of process all through in working on the samplers. You guys were putting on new samplers like halfway through the work, dive 6.
No, it's a little bit related. I mean, I think there's a lot of filmmakers here, so it's interesting, from my perspective is, this sub couldn't have been designed if Jim wasn't a filmmaker. It wouldn't look like what it looks like. And so there was this goal of getting to the bottom fast and getting up, but literally from day one, he wanted the ultimate imaging platform. And so a lot of the decisions were driven by getting the best and most engaging shots he could. And so there's a light tower that separates from the cameras, and there's a Hollywood camera boom out there. And so no normal sub guy would stick these spindly long boom arms on the sub. They do what they did with the mirrors and just keep putting more and more and more lights on. But Jim wanting the ultimate, and you just saw glimpses of the footage. But when you see some of the footage, it's mind-boggling the small difference of this camera on a pan and tilt and boom arm. It gives you this feeling of being and swimming with the submarine as opposed to looking statically, because now you can create these camera moves. And so from day one, it was about bringing back the ultimate imagery, and the sub, half of the systems were about that. That's not obvious necessarily.
Hey, I'd just like to say a big shout out to Don Walsh, our mentor. Don, if you-
Let's give this crew one more round of applause for the great job. So when you leave here, go out into the lobby and take a look at the personal sphere that's out there. That is a simulator. That's the correct to scale size. So if you can imagine yourself in that and dropping down for 7 miles. And there's some great photos. And then the after party, for those of you who did the after party, we're going upstairs and celebrate a little bit, and you get to mingle with these folks a little bit longer. So thank you all for coming.